Welcome to the Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021 regular business meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. Due to COVID-19 and in accordance with the latest Alameda County Health Order and with the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends portions of the Brown Act, this meeting will be conducted remotely. In compliance with said orders, a physical location has not been provided for this meeting. These measures will only apply during the period in which the state or local health officials have imposed or recommended social distancing. The Finance and Administration Committee met this morning and will report out under item 12. Also, the board participated in the long-term water supply workshop this morning to receive information on challenges facing the district's long-term water supply and strategies for improving resilience and sustainability within the water supply. All directors, including myself, are participating via teleconference. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director McIntosh.
Here.
Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson.
Present.
Director Young.
I'm here.
President Linney.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
To
to the flag
to the flag
of the States of
of the
America,
United
to the republic,
to the republic
under
for which it
God,
stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible.
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. There are no announcements from closed session. With regards to public comment, if members of the public wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard at the beginning of the meeting. That is next. Comments on agenda items will be heard when that item is up for consideration. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, I have the discretion to amend this time amount based on the number of speakers. The secretary will track time and inform each speaker when his or her allotted time has been concluded. Risha, do we have any public speakers for items not on the agenda?
We have no one on the line for public comment.
Okay. Then we will proceed to the consent calendar. There are 10 items for consideration. Any items to be pulled for discussion?
9 and 10, please.
Okay.
I'll move
Director
items
Mellon?
1 through 9. John.
1 through 8.
No, it's pulling 9 and 10, so that would be items.
Oh,
1
I'm
through
sorry,
8.
1 through 8. I'm sorry, I don't thought I heard item 10, quite frank.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Moved by Director Coleman, seconded by Director Mellon. All in, oh, we have to do roll call.
Roll call. Roll call
Go
vote.
ahead.
Director
Do roll call
Coleman.
vote.
Yes.
Director Katz.
Yes.
Director McIntosh.
yes.
Director Mellon.
Yes.
Director Patterson.
Yes.
Director Young.
Yes.
President Linney.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so that's unanimous vote for items 1 through 8. And let's go on to items, take up separately, items 9 and 10.
So I'm having some technical difficulties with my computer, so I'm on my iPhone right now. We have 2 items that we're bringing for consideration. It's the appointment of 2 assistant general counsel positions. The first is Lourdes Matthews, and the second is John Salmon. I think it's interesting to note that both Lourdes and John worked at EBMUD when they were in college. Both have years of experience in the district and have demonstrated their exceptional skills in supporting the district. With that, Director Mellon, would you like to say a few words?
I sure would. I know everybody by now is so used to me pulling these appointments because they're so important. But, it's really a pleasure to see the folks that we're appointing. Lourdes, you and I have worked together for a long time, it seems. And genuinely, I've been very impressed. The retirement board is not easy by a long shot. Anybody that thinks that the laws concerning that is easy, they're wrong. It's much easier doing all the regular labor law stuff. And you have shown really great talent at both. And I'm really pleased with this promotion. John, we've done some nice arm wrestling with some characters along the way, haven't we? And, I seem to remember a certain matter that continues, which will soon be the never-ending story, I think. But you being plunged into the middle of it and me being the director to be sitting across the table in a conference room off of, Davis Street there. And it was an interesting meeting, but your counsel has been incredibly valuable. And I'm very pleased on your appointment to this position. And so without further ado and embarrassing the two of you any further, I would move the recommendations in both items 9 and item 10.
Second.
But John's wearing a tie. He never wears a tie.
You have an obsession with ties, John. All
I
right, we
hate
have a
ties.
motion by Frank, seconded by Bill Patterson for items 9 and 10. Madam Secretary, would you take a roll call vote?
Okay, we're going to roll call vote for both items, or do you want to do those? Let's do those separate, just so we'll know.
I think we'll do both items together.
Both items, okay. Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Absolutely.
Director Mellon,
You bet.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. All right, carries unanimously.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is the part of the program where you are welcome to give some remarks. Lourdes, I'll let you start.
Okay, great. Thank you, board, and good afternoon. I'll keep this very brief. I just want to take this opportunity to say it's truly an honor and a privilege to work at the district in any capacity. And not only because we provide services essential to life and that we are stewards in protecting the environment, but primarily because every day I go to work, I get to work with and I witness the work of people who make it possible to deliver these essential services. And they do so with integrity, with diligence, care, and with a genuine desire to serve the district and the people we serve in the communities we serve. So thank you very much for this opportunity to serve the district as Assistant General Counsel. And I look forward to doing work for you.
Thank you.
And I would echo everything Lourdes just said. It's been a tremendous privilege for me to spend the last 8 years serving the district in its mission and serving the public. It's a great honor. I look forward to continuing to do so for many years to come. And I'm honored to be appointed as Assistant General Counsel, and I look forward to continuing the work of the district.
Well done, both of you.
Yeah, wish we could have a meeting room full of thunderous applause. You deserve it. Thank you we're very fortunate to have such stellar staff to be able to move into these positions like this. So congratulations to both of you.
Both graduates of very prestigious law schools. I mean, in the Bay Area, those two schools have provided more politicians and movers and shakers than any other school throughout the Bay Area. So we're very lucky to have the two of you.
And in Hastings' case, a vice president of the United States.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll now move on to reports. We'll now move on to determination and discussion.
So I have two items for you. The first one is the preliminary water supply availability and deficiency report. I will say that so far this year, rainfall both locally and upcountry have been well below average, and the forecast for the next 10 days remains dry. If there is a bright spot, and there's a small bright spot, the snow water content in our upper watershed is around 83% of average. At the second board meeting in April is when we submit our final water supply availability and deficiency report. But in years like this, when it's dry, we do come with a preliminary report to provide some information. And Dave Briggs, Director of Operations and Maintenance, will give you the update.
President Linney, good afternoon, members of the board. And I'll roll right into it here. So we're going to broaden the usual water supply update to include, or at least put it into the context of the drought management program. And by that, we'll include it as the preliminary water supply availability and deficiency report for February 23rd. And in addition to providing the current and projected water supply, we'll get into a few options that we may have to consider later in the spring should the hydrology remain as dry as it has been. So we always like to begin with a look at our water production. This provides a valuable set of parameters for us to guide our planning. It gives us a sense for our supply needs for the remainder of the year. It also gives us a sense for the level of conservation that's being exercised by our customer base. And as we've said in the past, this year, which is shown in red, is forecasted to be a couple percent above last year for a total of about 170 million gallons per day on average. And just noting the departure last year, which is shown in green, we had essentially zero rainfall in the month of February, and people really reached for their irrigation controllers both east and west of Hills. And the interesting thing about what's happening now is that this year, February of 2021, I think we've had just enough, a few tenths here, a few tenths there, that have distracted people and prevented them from doing that. But with a forecasted high in Oakland today of about 77 or 78 degrees, we are anticipating some level of response here from the customer bases. People might be in the mood to irrigate here pretty quickly. But nonetheless, we're forecasted to be a couple percent above last year. Okay, so now for the difficult part of the presentation. We're at 61% of average in our McKelvey watershed to date, and that includes an average January, and we're 3/4 of the way through February now at 3 inches. We may, as Clifford was alluding to, we may get another ½ inch in the 7 to 10 day forecast. That's it. About a ½ of an inch is all we can see. So February is probably going to finish at half of normal. And the good news is, that if there is any good news, is that we do not see a high pressure ridge parked above the state for a prolonged period. The storm door is open. It just remains to be seen if the right ingredients exist across the Pacific Ocean to blow a good storm past our service area and into the mountains. It's not looking good here locally either. 35% of average, that is very, very low average to date in our watersheds here locally. So that does a couple things. First is it raises the bar for our local refill. We do draw down our local storage seasonally, and when we have this dry of hydrology locally, it just increases that burden for refill in the winter and the spring. So that's going to be a little bit harder than normal. And it also dries out vegetation and increases demand. So this isn't directly that big of an indicator for our supply, but it does affect us in at least 2 other ways. Snowpack at this point, we're a little bit below average with our upper elevation snowpack at 8,000 feet, the highest elevation in the watershed. This is the one parameter that's anywhere near or close to normal at this point. So putting numbers on that, 85% of our snowpack, percent average of date for the water content of our snowpack is 85%. The depth is a little bit higher at 92%. And just taking a step back and looking at the Sierra up and down, we're doing better than the north and the south. The Central Sierra is at 75%, so this is throughout the watershed. The water content in the snow up there is 75% of average in the Central Sierra, and that's probably due to the one significant atmospheric river the state of California has seen so far this winter, which had a trajectory over the Central Sierra to our benefit. But looking to the north and south, especially the south, it's significantly worse. And that will factor in to State Water and Central Valley project allocations. We heard this morning, a few hours ago, that the preliminary allocations available to Central Valley project contractors for municipal and industrial is expected to be 55% of historic use. So based on the nature of the district's contract with the Bureau of Reclamation, that translates into about 73,000 acre feet that could be available to the district should we need it. Frankly, I thought it was going to be a lot lower than that. There were rumors that the Bureau was going to come out with a 25% allocation or health and safety level allocation. So they surprised us here a little bit. It's a little bit higher than I thought it was going to be. Looking at our storage, it's going down slightly, but more or less has been constant for several weeks now. The river inflow above Pardee is 300 or so CFS. 220 CFS or so below for a lower McElemy release below Comanche, and the difference between the two is we're essentially diverting into the aqueducts. But this storage will slowly start to get lower here as we get into the spring and the summer if the hydrology doesn't turn around, and particularly our local storage is low. We're much lower locally than we'd like to be. There were various construction projects over the winter that we accommodated that relied on our local storage and then just didn't get a lot of help from Mother Nature so far. So we're behind the curve significantly here locally. Okay, looking at the precipitation upcountry in the McElemy watershed, you can see that we're just shy of 19 inches to date. And the range of scenarios for hydrology that can play out, even a wet scenario, is still most likely going to get us below average. So we are almost certainly heading for a dry year, even if a miracle happens. The slightly more troubling issue is that we're at 19 inches right now. We need another 4 inches just to get to 1977 levels, which statistically speaking, we have a very, very high likelihood of reaching and exceeding. Even the 90% exceedance from here gets us a few inches above 1977. But anytime you're in a conversation with 1977 hydrology, it's not really a conversation you want to be in. But we'll hope for some more storms here in March and April. And then looking at the data here for our storage and forecasting it, this data is from about a week ago, and our 90% hydrology, our dry hydrology, has us ending the season with our total system storage for the dry scenario of 495,000 acre feet of carryover. The wet scenario, believe it or not, could actually fill the system if that were to occur. But the one caveat to share at this point is that this data is a week old, and a week in February is a very valuable week to have, and we just had a week of zeros. And on top of that, the 7 to 10 day forecast is not rich with precipitation. So right now, if I were to draw this red line, I would probably draw it closer to 465, which is unfortunately what we're tracking right now. And so this is part of the reason why we wanted to, oops, wrong button. Let me get back to where I was. Sorry about that. There we go. So this is part of the reason why we wanted to bring the water supply presentation into the context of the drought management program. And this table is from the 2016 Urban Water Management Plan. The board received an update this morning during the workshop. This table and this policy is being reviewed as part of the 2020 update to the Urban Water Management Plan. And the point here is to not dwell on a particular trigger or a particular number, but just to communicate to the board that under the worst case scenario, we could be heading for a system carryover storage level in the 450 to 475 range under the driest scenario. And at a minimum, that would lead to a conversation in the boardroom in late April when we make a final supply determination and potentially board actions as well. So more to come. And even though nothing needs to happen today or tomorrow in terms of a board decision, we just wanted to ensure the board that we're working on a variety of options here for the board to consider later, should we need to, and should conditions remain this dry. So of course, demand management, rationing, and wise use of water is part of that equation. But also, we bring in supplemental water supplies as well if needed. The top of that list would be our CVP water. As I mentioned, that could be up to 73,000 acre feet. We will likely schedule that water, but we do not need to take it. So we will plan for every contingency and await the board's decision later this spring. Other options, as was mentioned this morning during the water supply workshop, we could exercise an option with Placer County, depending on what water they make available. We won't know that for another couple months or so, but we do have that option as well. And we even have 2,000 acre feet stored in Los Vaqueros Reservoir associated with an action several years ago. And we could either take that water directly through an intertie, or if Freeport is online, we could take it through Freeport through a CVP water exchange. So we're planning for the worst. We don't want to be caught on our heels. We want to give the board all the options available to them. And we will come back with water supply updates in March and the first week of April. We will know so much more in 2 months when we come back in late April with a final water supply availability and deficiency report. And so we'll see you in 2 weeks and every 2 weeks until we get through the spring. If there's any questions, I'll take them now.
Any questions?
This is Doug. This is John. I just have one quick question for David. How much more really the precipitation we need is in our watershed?
Yes.
Upstream versus down here. I'll want it here as well. About how much more in rainfall or snowfall do we need in order to avoid the potential for rationing or voluntary rationing? Because I've gotten asked that before and I didn't know.
So, you know, some of these lines that we draw on these guidelines, Director Coleman, are gray and subject to your interpretation, the board's interpretation. But to answer your question, we need a few inches, and that's not much, but we need a few inches in the upper McElmy watershed to get us in the high 400s. If we get a few inches up there, we'll be in the high 400s, and I think, you know, some of your decisions become a little easier.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
And next up, we have David giving the coronavirus update. I'll also share with the board that you'll be getting in the mail, I think next week, some EBMUD logoed face masks. So Dave, why don't you take it away with the coronavirus update?
Okay, good afternoon again, Director Linney and members of the board. So as is typical, the state of California updates their statistics at the county level every Tuesday around noontime. And at that today, a couple hours ago, the state confirmed that all of our operational counties will remain in the purple tier. However, Marin and San Mateo were moved to the red tier based on the progress that those counties are making. Just about all the health metrics you want to quote are rapidly improving. I think if you looked at the profile of the data, positivity rate, infection rate, transmission rates, hospital, ICU, et cetera, it's beginning to look a lot like it did prior to Thanksgiving. So we're still at an elevated level, but we're rapidly approaching that pre-holiday period. There haven't been any significant changes to the district safety protocols, and that's somewhat of a bland statement, but I have to say there's a lot of work that goes in behind that. Even though the rules haven't changed greatly in many, many months, there's a lot of energy that it gets put into training, reinforcement, example setting, both by management and staff, to keep everybody on their toes, following the same safety protocols, because that's frankly why we've had the ability to get through this so far. No significant impacts to operations, and maybe a caveat or a footnote on that is that one of the biggest chemical suppliers in North America, Univar, put up a warning flag a few days ago that they were having difficulties meeting supply demands across the country. Luckily, it's not impacting the West Coast or the district, but the conditions in the Midwest, combined with the pandemic, gave them a bit of a reason for pause, and that caught our attention. But we don't expect to be impacted by this, and the supply chain is loosening up again. But Univar supplies us with chlorine, so pretty much our #1 chemical for water and wastewater. Vaccinations are proceeding well. The state and federal government set up the site at the Coliseum, and I've heard that that's very efficiently run, where the doses administered in the state, I think, are up to 7.7 million. This figure is from last week. So it's proceeding quickly, 1.3 million per week, and then that should increase. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine might be approved within 7 days, might be distributed within 14, but otherwise, many of the logistics with vaccination have been ironed out, and it's just a matter of being supply limited at this point. Our vaccination plan hasn't changed much. It remains a voluntary, non-mandated vaccination plan. We're putting all of our energy into promoting vaccinations and all the good things that happen with that to the district, to employees' families. So that will manifest itself in a series of brown bag seminars or guest speakers that we can hopefully move the needle on those employees of the district who are considering or still on the fence whether or not they want to be vaccinated. So hopefully we can influence that decision. And we'll do everything we can to facilitate employee taking district time to go get a vaccination. The state has not changed their policy in the last couple of weeks with respect to priorities. So even though most counties at this point are already in 1B, most counties are vaccinating the 1B group, which includes emergency responders, teachers, those in the agricultural sector. Most counties are in 1B. If they haven't already, by March 15th, that will broaden up to the 16 to 64 age group with underlying health conditions. So at the district, HR staff are tracking our vaccination rates, and management recommends that employees be required to disclose their vaccination status confidentially to HR. We believe that data is very valuable. It will help guide our safe return to workplace plan. It will also help us gauge the vulnerability of the district if the pandemic takes a turn for the worse, if we see a fourth wave, or if the pandemic goes on for an extended period of time. So we do think this data is valuable. And of course, we will continue to meet and work with unions on this issue and get their input and communicate both ways with them. So with the pandemic taking a less intense turn for the moment, I think it is giving the emergency operations team and the senior management team the time and focus and the ability to begin working earnestly on a safe return to workplace plan. And this plan houses the details that will incrementally bring the district back to whatever the new normal ends up being. And the details that are in this plan include things about telecommuting and safety protocols and PPE and whether or not you can ride in the same car with somebody and who can visit the building, public, et cetera, occupancy rates. So all these details will be in this plan. We being management, haven't gotten very far towards putting this a detailed plan together, but now hopefully with this less intense period, we can finally really start to focus on it. And the data, as we've mentioned before, the data that will be used to guide that plan include vaccination rates, infection rates, what's happening with schools, infection rates for our own employees, et cetera. And of course, this will also be a two-way dialogue with unions and employees as we begin to work on this. But we could see, it is conceivable that Alameda County could be in the red tier next week. And if you're an optimist, you could see orange and yellow tiers coming to many district counties coming in the next few months. So there's no time to delay on this. We need to start making progress on this immediately. So I'll just conclude here with our latest data, 68 employee positives. And that 65 figure of the employees who've returned to work, that's now 67. So only one person is at home isolating. No employees are in the hospital for COVID-related reasons. We used a contractor last week to support us handling our call load to our COVID hotline. We're not using the contractor right now for a couple of reasons, but we have the ability to use a contractor if we come into another intense period of the pandemic. We concluded our testing, our employee testing, I guess that was 2 weeks ago. 1,600 samples were analyzed and only 5 were positive. So that's over. And I think that's the end. I thought I had one more statistic to share, but I think, oh yeah, I think 16 people are in quarantine right now. But otherwise, that's the latest data we have for you. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Just a comment, I had a chance to see the sheriff do the rollout for the county first responders, and they did it at OES out in Dublin. And I got to tell you, it was like a well-oiled machine. They started at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they were running people through there. There was no backup, no traffic problems. They were getting in. And this is with them making sure that they were sitting for at least 20 minutes after the shot because they wanted to be sure that they were okay. Oh, and the last thing, they fed them good.
John?
A quick
you have a
question.
comment?
It begs the question, David and Clifford, assuming it would keep moving in the right direction, hopefully, for the sake of everybody, when does that mean, at what point will we be back in the boardroom?
That's a good question, and I think there's still a lot of data that we're going to be looking at. Also, any changes to the Brown Act. We've told employees that we're going to extend the telecommuting through June 18th. So we're not bringing people back until at least June 18th for a variety of reasons why we picked that date. But we're going to continue to monitor. A lot of it's going to depend on the distribution of the vaccines. The status of school reopenings, childcare reopenings. So there's a lot of factors we're looking at before we make the next step.
The reason I ask, although I have not received a vaccination yet, I think it's important when we start telling employees that they need to be coming back, that we're coming back into the boardroom as well to show we believe in what we're saying.
Well, I can.
And clearly, if somebody has a qualm about it as a board member, then they should have the right to be able to do the remote call in.
John, I've got my first shot and I'm getting my second one this Thursday.
Well, I put my name on the list and I figure I'll get mine in July.
I join with you, Frank. I'm all due with my number 1, and I'm up for my number 2 next week.
Excellent, Bill.
As the youngest board member in age, it may take me a bit longer. So, I think we do need to pay attention to vaccination schedules. And on that note, not speaking for the board specifically, but thinking about our employees who are particularly the employees who we consider on our front lines. Many frontline workers, starting with healthcare workers and expanding to police and fire, now fast food, not just fast food, but also food sector workers are expressly in phase 1B. This phase 1B also expanded to teachers with a reserve. It also expanded to 65 and up. This phase could go on for quite a while, and that raises an important question: where do our workers stand? Not everyone who can perform their work from home, but for those who can't perform their work from home, have we made a more recent communication to the county health departments, but also to the state vaccine committees that are considering prioritization so that they don't forget about our sector?
Yeah, so I reached out to the county yesterday because phase 1B is limited to certain sectors, and one of them is emergency services. Emergency services includes certain types of essential workers, not explicitly water and wastewater workers. But I put in the request to get information because it seemed to me that under the emergency services, there was one category that included a subset of our employees. So I got a preliminary response. We're going to verify that, and then we will share that with you and everyone else. But right now, water and wastewater sector was in phase 1C, and phase 1C, as Dave described, was eliminated. So I've been looking at the emergency services sector and the particular category of essential workers. But I would say realistically, how it stands right now, water and wastewater have been excluded from that prioritization.
Thanks for that update. That does, seem to me to be a problem. It seems like we have workers who were should be vaccinated ahead of the general population. And while it's great to look for ways to qualify them right now, there are comparable workers who should qualify for either the current tier or a subsequent tier within phase 1B. I would encourage a follow-up communication.
We're definitely doing that and trying to find ways to get water and wastewater sector in. I've also written letters both to the state and the county to say that water and wastewater workers should be prioritized. So I've been making every effort to try to prioritize our workers, and we'll see what progress we make.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you, Dave. Any other items under general matters?
That is all I have.
Okay. Minutes from the February 9th Legislative Human Services Committee were included in the agenda packet. We will now receive a report from today's Finance and Administration Committee meeting. Director Patterson.
Yes. Let me say it was a pleasure this morning to hear the 2021 semi-annual budget performance report as presented. And we are in fine fettle moving forward. Let me just say that the Finance and Administration Committee approved and recommended that item, along with the monthly investment transactions report and the semi-annual internal audit report, which was received. And interesting things going on there, updating many of the areas that we were concerned about earlier. All those were approved by the committee. And we heard a wonderful report about an invitation for an application we made several years ago for federal Intervention Act loan monies that will be coming to the district. So we're in line for that. And as I said before, it makes the fiscal side very sound. And when we have to make these decisions related to the emergency, we are able, and I want to say the district remains in very good fiscal condition.
All right, thank you for that report, Bill. We also had, of course, our long-term water supply workshop this morning. Had a great presentation centering around building a resilient and diversified portfolio in order to be responsive to particular the uncertainties brought about by climate change, and just making sure that we have a lot of different strategies to deal with that, including water conservation and new supplies, et cetera. Time for director comments. Are there any director comments at this point? All right, hearing none, seeing none. Any other items for future consideration, please submit those to the general manager. Our next regular meeting of the board will be held on Tuesday, March 9th, 2021 at 1:15. Please stay safe, everyone, and this meeting is now adjourned.